Story 1. I'm a teenager who spends most of my time browsing the internet, looking for something interesting to do. One day, I came across the idea of exploring an abandoned house alone, thinking it would make me appear cool if I recorded the experience and showed it to my friends. After searching through several options, I settled on a large mansion known for its tragic history. The mansion had been left abandoned after a dark incident involving a man who, driven by jealousy, had committed a terrible act against his family. Despite the unsettling history, I didn't believe in haunted places, nor was I easily scared. Armed with just a flashlight, I decided to investigate. The mansion was located about 30 minutes away from my home on foot, nestled in a remote area that added to its eerie atmosphere. Ignoring any potential dangers, I ventured inside. Almost immediately, a part of the roof collapsed near me, a clear warning sign to turn back. However, I pressed on, stepping carefully over the debris and exploring further. Inside, I encountered unsettling sights, bullet holes riddling the walls, evidence of the tragic event that had unfolded there. Despite the foreboding atmosphere, I continued my exploration, curious about what else the mansion held. In one of the bedrooms, I encountered a smell that made my stomach churn, hinting at something gruesome nearby. Against my better judgment, I investigated further and stumbled upon a scene that chilled me to the core: 3 young figures, dressed in outdated clothing, lying motionless with fatal wounds. Shocked and unable to comprehend what I was seeing, I felt a wave of nausea and confusion wash over me. Before I could process what had happened, I blacked out. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital bed, disoriented and terrified. The doctors explained that I had been found in the mansion by a passerby who heard my cries for help. They informed me that I had been exposed to a dangerous gas still present in the mansion, which had affected my health significantly. As I lay in the hospital, grappling with the reality of my situation, I couldn't shake the image of those children from my mind. Their tragic fate haunted me, leaving me with unanswered questions about what I had witnessed. Despite the doctor's reassurances, I felt a deep sense of unease, as if the mansion's dark past had somehow imprinted itself on me. In the days that followed, I became consumed with researching the history of the mansion, desperate to understand the events that had led to such a horrifying discovery. With each piece of information I uncovered, the mystery only deepened, drawing me further into its unsettling embrace. As my health continued to deteriorate, I found myself reflecting on the fragility of life and the fleeting nature of our existence. The mansion had become more than just a place. It was a symbol of the darkness that can lurk within us all, waiting to be uncovered. In the end, I never found definitive answers to the questions that plagued me. My time in the hospital became a blur of treatments and visits from concerned loved ones, all while the mansion and its secrets remained shrouded in mystery. Though my physical condition worsened, I found a strange sense of peace in knowing that I had faced something beyond comprehension. Whether it was a hallucination brought on by the gas or something more profound, I had confronted my fears and confronted a glimpse into the unknown. As I closed my eyes for the last time, surrounded by the comforting presence of my family, I felt a fleeting sense of closure. The mansion and its secrets would remain forever unresolved, a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. Story 2. Carl and I shared an insatiable curiosity for exploring abandoned buildings. It was a hobby that had brought us to countless forgotten places, each with its own story of neglect and decay. But it was during one of these explorations that I experienced the most chilling moment of my life. Our hometown was nestled amidst a landscape dotted with relics of a bygone industrial era, old, decaying factories and forgotten structures that seemed frozen in time. These places were our playground, our canvas for adventure. We had explored many of them, from crumbling warehouses to empty assembly lines, but none had ever sent shivers down my spine until that fateful Halloween season. Carl, always the more adventurous of the two of us, came to me with an electrifying proposition one crisp autumn day. His aunt, now retired and living in another state, had once been a nurse at a psychiatric hospital that lay hidden deep within a dense forest on the outskirts of town. The hospital had been closed for decades, its existence virtually erased from local memory due to the thick overgrowth and lack of accessible roads. Intrigued by the prospect of discovering such a hidden gem, we eagerly packed our essentials, a couple of flashlights, a set of walkie-talkies, and enough snacks to last a small expedition. Setting out a week before Halloween, we followed Carl's aunt's rough directions, navigating through the dense forest and overgrown trails that led to our destination. It was a journey fraught with uncertainty, as the path grew narrower and less defined with every step. But after what seemed like an eternity of trudging through thick underbrush and dodging tangled branches, we stumbled upon a faint, overgrown path that hinted at the presence of civilization long forgotten. Following the trail deeper into the heart of the forest, we found ourselves standing before an imposing structure, the abandoned psychiatric hospital. Its massive, weather-beaten facade loomed over us like a silent sentinel amidst the sea of trees. The sight was both awe-inspiring and eerily unsettling, as if the building itself held secrets that it dared not reveal. Finding an unsecured entry point, a broken window on the ground floor, we cautiously slipped inside, our flashlights casting long, dancing shadows across the dusty floor. The air inside was heavy with the scent of decay and neglect, a testament to years of abandonment and isolation. We exchanged nervous glances, our excitement tinged with a hint of apprehension as we ventured deeper into the hospital's dimly lit corridors. Deciding to split up to cover more ground, Carl headed towards the east wing while I explored the west. The corridors were a maze of forgotten memories, empty patient rooms with rusted beds, remnants of medical equipment strewn about like artifacts from a lost civilization. It was a chilling reminder of the lives that had once inhabited these now desolate halls. As I ventured deeper into the hospital's interior, my footsteps echoing faintly against the cold, tiled floors, I suddenly froze at the sound that pierced the silence, a loud, unmistakable scream echoing through the corridors. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my walkie-talkie, desperately trying to reach Carl. "Carl, did you hear that?" I whispered into the device, my voice trembling with fear. There was a crackle of static before Carl's voice responded, filled with concern. "Yeah, I heard it too. Are you okay? Was that you screaming?" I shook my head vigorously, even though he couldn't see me. "No, it wasn't me. I thought it was you." Before we could exchange another word, the scream echoed again, this time closer to Carl's location. Fear seized me as I hurried back towards the main corridor, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls. We agreed to regroup immediately, our nerves on edge as we navigated through the hospital's labyrinthine corridors, each step echoing with the unsettling silence punctuated only by distant screams. Reuniting in the hospital's central atrium, we exchanged bewildered looks, our minds racing with unanswered questions. What, or who, could be screaming in this abandoned place, miles away from civilization? Armed with only our flashlights and a growing sense of unease, we descended into the basement where the screams had originated. The basement was a cavernous expanse of darkness, its walls lined with rows of locked doors and empty corridors that stretched into infinity. We moved cautiously, our footsteps echoing loudly against the cold, concrete floor. The air was thick with dust and a palpable sense of dread as we searched room after room, our flashlights casting long, eerie shadows against the walls. Hours passed as we combed through the basement's labyrinthine corridors, finding nothing but silence and an unyielding darkness that seemed to swallow us whole. The screams had ceased as mysteriously as they had begun, leaving us with more questions than answers. Were we alone in this abandoned hospital, or was there something, or someone else lurking in the shadows? By the time we ascended back to the ground floor, exhaustion and frustration weighed heavily on our minds. The sun had begun its descent beyond the horizon, casting long shadows through the hospital's broken windows. We had searched every corner of the hospital, hoping to find a clue or a sign of whoever, or whatever, had been screaming. Reluctantly accepting defeat, we made our way back through the darkening forest, the journey home fraught with an unsettling silence that hung heavy in the air. Our minds were haunted by the unanswered mystery of the screams, each step a reminder of the chilling uncertainty that had gripped us inside those decaying walls. Reporting the incident to the authorities seemed futile, as there was little evidence to support our claims. Who would believe two teenagers claiming to have heard screams in an abandoned hospital, miles away from civilization? And yet, the memory of that night continued to haunt us, lingering like a ghost in the corners of our minds. In the days that followed, Carl and I struggled to make sense of what we had experienced. Was it a desperate cry for help from someone trapped in the depths of that abandoned hospital, or was it something more sinister, something meant to drive us away? The unanswered questions gnawed at us, leaving us restless and uneasy. Years have passed since that fateful Halloween night, yet the memory of the abandoned hospital and its haunting echoes still lingers in my mind. Carl and I have drifted apart, our lives taking us down different paths, but the bond forged in that dark, forsaken place remains unbreakable. To this day, I often find myself haunted by the echoes of that chilling scream, wondering if we had stumbled upon a forgotten tragedy or unleashed something best left undisturbed. The abandoned hospital stands as a silent sentinel in my memory, a testament to the mysteries that lie hidden in the shadows of our world, a reminder that some secrets are meant to remain buried in the darkness. Story 3. In the rural outskirts where I spent my childhood, nestled amidst dense forests and rolling fields, there existed a whispered legend, a tale of an old, abandoned psychiatric hospital. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, weaving tales of madness, haunting echoes, and dark secrets. Most stories seemed more fiction than fact, yet one narrative persisted. The asylum had shuttered its doors in the tumultuous 1960s, amid allegations of severe malpractice. As a child, I often pondered why such a facility would be situated so far from town, deep within the tranquility of the countryside. My youthful imagination speculated it was to isolate the dangerous patients, a notion dispelled later in life as I learned more about mental illness. Perhaps, instead, the remote setting aimed to provide peace and solace to its troubled inhabitants. My friend Eric and I, being teenagers brimming with curiosity and a touch of bravado, frequently discussed venturing out to locate this fabled hospital. We speculated about ghosts and eerie encounters, imagining it would be an adrenaline-pumping escapade. Despite our talk, years passed without action. Yet, at 16, fueled by youthful daring and a surge of peer stories about illicit parties held within its walls, we finally resolved to embark on our expedition. Guided by tales from other thrill-seeking teenagers, we navigated through dense woodland until we stumbled upon a rusted barbed wire fence adorned with stern, "No trespassing" signs. According to our sources, this marked the boundary of the hospital grounds, a clear signal that our destination was near. Undeterred, we pressed onward until the imposing structure loomed before us. The hospital, a colossal relic of forgotten years, stood weathered but surprisingly intact. Its windows, a stark contrast to my imagined scenes of shattered glass and desolation, stared back at us like empty eyes. With hearts pounding and adrenaline surging, Eric and I devised a plan to explore the premises thoroughly. Splitting up to cover more ground, we agreed to reconvene at the opposite end of the building. I ventured towards the rear, navigating cautiously in search of an entry point. Despite my initial bravado, the eerie silence and the weight of the building's history gave me pause. It was then, near a neglected service entrance obscured by overgrown vines, that I stumbled upon an unexpected scene. A nondescript van sat parked nearby, its doors flung open as several men busied themselves with loading bulky items into its rear. Fear pricked at my skin as I realized these were not fellow thrill-seekers or curious explorers like ourselves. Hastily retreating, I contemplated my next move. My priority was to regroup with Eric, but dread crept in as I recalled our plan to rendezvous at the far end. Eric, who was nowhere to be found. Creeping cautiously back towards the front of the building, I scanned anxiously for any sign of Eric's presence. As minutes ticked by, turning into an eternity of uncertainty, I grappled with mounting concern. Had he encountered trouble? Had he ventured inside against our agreement? My dread peaked when, circling to the rear once more, I witnessed the men loading their van and preparing to depart. Relief washed over me as they drove off in the opposite direction, yet it did little to ease the gnawing worry for Eric's safety. Hours stretched into an agonizing wait. I scoured every inch of the hospital grounds, calling out for Eric in hushed tones, half afraid of alerting anyone, or anything, that might be lurking within. With each passing moment, the shadows deepened, and my resolve wavered. Finally, reluctantly accepting the inevitable, I made the reluctant decision to return home and seek help. Contacting the authorities, I recounted the events of that afternoon, the abandoned hospital, the mysterious men, and Eric's inexplicable disappearance. Search parties scoured the area, but their efforts yielded no trace of my friend. Anxiety coiled within me, gripping my heart with icy fingers as the days stretched on with no news. Then, just when despair threatened to overwhelm me completely, Eric returned. His arrival, however, brought more questions than answers. When pressed for details, he offered a vague explanation of getting lost in the woods, a feeble excuse that failed to satisfy my growing unease. Eric's demeanor, usually buoyant and carefree, now carried an underlying tension. He avoided my probing questions about the men and the van, deflecting with a nervous laugh or a forced smile. Yet, in the quiet moments when our eyes met, I glimpsed a flicker of fear, evidence that he knew more than he let on. Days turned into weeks, and Eric retreated into silence about that fateful day. The vibrant energy that once defined our friendship dulled, overshadowed by unspoken fears and unaddressed mysteries. Our conversations, once filled with dreams of adventure and shared secrets, became stilted and guarded. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eric's brief disappearance held darker truths than he dared admit. His reluctance to discuss the events around the hospital, coupled with his abrupt return and subsequent silence, gnawed at my conscience. Was he protecting me from something sinister he had witnessed? Or was he grappling with secrets too terrifying to utter aloud? As months passed, the hospital faded from local gossip, replaced by newer tales and fleeting obsessions of teenage life. Yet, for Eric and me, its looming presence lingered, a stark reminder of a day that shattered our youthful innocence and left us both irrevocably changed. To this day, Eric and I remain bound by unspoken promises and shared silences. Though the hospital stands empty and forgotten, its shadow stretches across our memories, a testament to the fragility of curiosity and the enduring power of fear.